Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. The unnamed Democrat beats the unnamed Republican by 21 points. No, or is it 8? But Rudy Giuliani beats Hillary Clinton, but he doesn't. She beats him 48-43. Fred Thompson, an undeclared candidate, is running second to Rudy in most polls and is in a statistically dead heat in one. What's going on with the polls? Joining me to talk about polls, polling, and pollsters is Mickey Blum, founding partner of the highly regarded polling firm of Blum Weprin Associates. Mickey is the pollster for New York One, the Daily News, and Newsday, and appears frequently on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, the BBC, PBS, and others. And most important to me, she is the incoming director of the Baruch Survey Research Unit and will be a colleague of mine. Welcome, Mickey.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you back.
Pleasure to be here.
These polls, I don't even know where to start, but let's start with the Republicans in Thompson. What's this? The guy has no record. He's not a candidate. He's running number 2.
Good place to start because it's really sort of a cautionary tale for looking at all of the polls. It's part of what tells us that it's so fluid, it's so early. He came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he's...
Well, Law and Order he came
Well, he came out of television land.
Right, he came out of your TV set.
Came out of your TV, and all of a sudden he's number 2. And in South Carolina, he's number 1 by a little bit, which is just amazing. But it doesn't really mean that it'll stay that way. I mean, first, he could move up. He could disappear after the excitement of his, just showing up as the new guy on the block dies down. Hard to say. I think, what we see is that nobody has really made up their mind yet. Voters are not firm in their choices. They may have a preference at this point, but they're not committed to their candidates yet.
We're talking about June of the year before.
Why should they be committed?
Right. You've got pools and swimming, and on top of that, the polling operations are asking likely voters.
Yeah, who is a likely voter now?
Your colleagues are, they're out there.
Right, because they think that it's better to do that than to just be asking all registered voters, because you might be closer to what it'll be. Mm-hmm. But, who knows? With Thompson, I would say the thing that bodes really well for him, and maybe is the best, one of the best things he has going for him, is that the Republicans were not happy with their field about a month ago, before he showed up. They were... When the Democrats were asked, they liked their field of candidates. Right. When Republicans were asked, they didn't.
They want somebody else.
Thompson came in. They're happy now. That bodes well for him. He's somebody that a lot of Republicans feel comfortable with, who were not comfortable with any of their
And this
choices.
is the Republican base, the more conservative, religiously oriented, abortion-driven, wedge issue-driven.
Right.
But does anybody know this guy?
No. And maybe that's part of why he's doing so well. The others were all in the debates. He ends up winning the debate by not being in it. Okay.
Now, is this phenomenon similar to the Obama phenomenon, where you had this burst of interest and energy, and substantial fundraising, in fact, as well. Yes. But the numbers have really begun to decline in a sort of steady way.
Right. Obama has sort of plateaued in a way. Again, except for South Carolina, but that apart, at the moment, there was a thought that, he came in and he started doing so well and he's taking vote away from Hillary and she's going to fall and he's going to take over. It hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. She's stayed very strong. Really, her numbers have not changed. If anything, she's gotten stronger in some places. Obama's numbers he's in second place pretty much everywhere. He's doing well, but he hasn't moved past where he got to right at the beginning.
Do we have a two-tiered race in the two-tiered race in the Democratic Party, sort of Hillary and Obama, and Edwards is there?
Yeah, but he's not really. And in fact, when Gore's name
another non-candidate.
He's not a candidate either, but even not as a candidate, and he isn't even trying to sort of say that he might be or anything
Thompson's
else.
Clearly testing
unlike Thompson, he still if his name is offered as a choice, he comes in number 3, ahead of Edwards,
and he gets 15+%.
He gets 15 to 20%. Actually, oddly enough, he hurts all of them, which is fascinating because you would think that he would be hurting one specific one, but he isn't. Although clearly, because he pushes Edwards down even further, it's even worse for Edwards.
Who does Thompson hurt? It looks like Rudy's numbers are more particularly affected, and Romney finishes behind him anyway.
Right. He does hurt Rudy because the excitement about Rudy and about Rudy as number 1 fades a bit, and Rudy's numbers have slipped a bit. He also hurts McCain even more. McCain just keeps falling farther and farther behind. And he really, is not doing well, basically, except in Iowa.
Okay. Rudy, he's still number 1, but he's slipping.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the numbers that suggest why? Is it abortion? Is it just more familiarity in general? I mean, I know it's too early, and I'm asking you to almost read tea leaves rather than, crosstabs, but...
Well, the abortion issue hurts Rudy with the conservative right, no question, and the big base of the Republican Party. There are people in the Republican Party who cannot vote for him because of his position.
But that's only like 25%.
But it's not that.
It's
not all of the Republicans. There are certainly the old-style Republicans who were not the Christian right, but were the fiscal conservatives, the old-fashioned kind of Republicans. Those people really like Rudy Giuliani because they like his leadership and they believe he can win, and that's really important to them.
But in a recent poll that you did, it's this familiarity breeds contempt.
Absolutely.
The closer you get to the city, the less well he does. Describe it.
Well, actually, familiarity is not a good thing for Rudy Giuliani. We did find 2 things. Number 1, the closer you get into New York City, the less he's liked. So, I mean, we did a poll of New York State, and he was liked very well upstate, sort of so-so in the burbs, and not in New York City, where which was his base. And also, in a poll comparing Rudy Giuliani with Mayor Bloomberg in New York City, New Yorkers thought not only that Bloomberg was the better mayor, but that Bloomberg would be a much better president.
I know.
Than Rudy Giuliani. So it says something about, in a place where people knew him well, and the views are certainly a lot more complicated than
I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the numbers. My guess would be that he would be doing particularly poorly among blacks.
Yes, he does.
Real low numbers.
He does very poorly.
Higher, but still not great among Latinos, and probably does majority well with whites. I mean, does that race break holes?
That's still true, but in New York City, even whites have very mixed feelings.
Okay, so let's stick with Rudy, since he's obviously a fascinating and compelling figure. I mean, if looking at the polls for this show, he's leading in Florida, he's leading in New Jersey, he's leading in New York, he's second in New Hampshire, and first in Iowa. I mean, how does he lose? I know he's got plenty of time. It's only June.
There's still plenty of time, and once Thompson comes in, now we have a whole new race, and it may turn out that at that point it's much more a 2-tier race, also with those 2 candidates really battling it out.
So you could see the way the movement could play out: a Thompson-Giuliani first tier and John McCain in the second tier, with Mitt Romney, who's really finishing almost out of the money.
Yes, Romney's finishing 4th in most national polls. I mean, he has a couple of places he's doing better. He does well in New Hampshire, not surprisingly, since he's from Massachusetts.
Right.
But you know, he only has a couple of pockets of strength. But McCain finishes really badly in a whole lot of states as well.
Is he in some way done? I know it's early, and there's, you know, a week is an infinity in politics, but it just seems like the air is going out of it.
And McCain, there's such an irony somehow behind McCain, because he's really the maverick in the wrong year.
Right.
He was a maverick in a year when nobody wanted him to be, and he opposed the president when Republicans did not want to see, you know, someone oppose the president, and so they don't really trust him, and they have some bad leftover feelings for him. And now this year, he's backing all these unpopular positions of the president,
including immigration,
on the war and immigration, which in the Republican Party, at least among Republican primary voters, is not a popular position.
If you had to lay some money on this right now, I mean,
oh, please,
how do you can't figure this one. You don't know how Iowa's going to play. No. You don't know how New Hampshire's going to play. You don't know how this Tsunami Tuesday. I mean, is it possible? I mean, it's probably possible. If you looked at the polling a week before that primary, that you could have people leading in Illinois and New York and somebody else in California. You could have it split up. The conventional wisdom seems to believe that you're going to, the momentum is going to come in. It's going to solidify around 2 candidates, and then, God forbid, we have a general election campaign that lasts 9 months. The other possibility is they split this all up.
Absolutely.
Is Rudy in a position to
sweep those? I obviously don't know yet. If his numbers keep slipping, if, you know, there were stories today about Mexico City and Rudy having
business
gone
dealings,
in as you know, as a consultant to sort of clean it up, and really did it do anything, and, you know, was it a lot of hype but nothing actually happened down there? I mean, you know, if the opposition starts chipping away at some things which might not be as popular in his party, he might start to slip.
He seems to have vulnerabilities. I mean, his personal life is a mess.
Certainly.
His stands on issues, at least with the base, seem like he's on the wrong side of the culture wars. But it's 9/11. It's the mythology of 9/11.
Right.
You've got to, in a sense, deconstruct that mythology. The opponents have to do that, whether it's these fire hosed or the Mexico City thing. He seems to be the most vulnerable.
He is the most vulnerable because he's sort of running on that. On 2 things. On saying, I came in and cleaned up New York.
Right. I'm a tough guy.
I'm a tough guy, and I was able to clean up New York when nobody believed that was possible. And I was there, and I was strong, and I showed leadership in 9/11. And those are very compelling to especially to Republicans. And well, as they would be, you know, I mean, it's a compelling story.
Right. I mean, we all saw it on TV. It's burned in our memories.
You know, but are there holes in that story? Yes, there are. And, you know, does he have other vulnerabilities? Yes, he has a lot of them. And I think that at some point, you know, that some of those may show up. Also, he has not really, you know, he's had a very sort of mixed response in the debates. You know, he did very poorly in the first one, and then he did very well in the second one.
Yeah, he didn't study for the first one, it sounded like, and he did for the second.
We'll see how that plays out.
How do you explain the phenomenon that I mentioned at the top, is that the generic Dem beats the generic Republican by anywhere between 10 and 20 points, but when you match them head to head, the Republicans win.
Right.
Or Rudy at least beats Hillary.
Or they tie.
Or they're very close.
They're very close.
Right.
And it really is that sort of in that kind of hypothetical. It's sort of, you know, when you ask people about how they feel about Congress in general, and then you ask them about their congressman, very different. When you talk about how people feel about the Democrats and the Republicans, right now, a lot of what you're getting is the anti-Bush.
Right, right. I mean, clearly. He's an albatross.
Right. Then when you match up the individuals, you get something very different, and people are starting to look at them. And they haven't really, since they haven't really even decided who they want, no less who they don't want. Those are much more difficult choices for them to make. And people are much more divided because they don't know yet.
Right, it's early.
It's really early, and it's not just Hillary that doesn't do as well in the one matchup. Neither do the other Democrats.
Right. When might this opinion begin to crystallize, where the polling really suggests more what's really out there, if you will? If that's a fair question.
You know, probably as we're moving into the primary season, probably in the fall, but, you know, who knows?
Right.
You know, and you know, we can see from what happened with Thompson that things can change,
really,
you know, really quickly.
And Obama, when he jumped in.
So somebody coming in, somebody dropping out, something that something that happens in the world can change everything.
Right. Okay. We talked about anger. We talked about the two parties. Let's talk about a third party. NBC News did a poll with the Wall Street Journal that said that 48% of Americans said that it's time for a new person as their congressperson. And only 41% say he deserves to be reelected. The president's got extraordinarily low approval ratings. Institutions have extraordinarily low approval ratings. The parties have low approval ratings. Is there an opening for a third party here that you at least can discern in the data, or is this wishful thinking?
I probably really don't think that the country is really looking for a third party, even if they're not really happy with what's happening. I don't know that at this point the country sees that as the answer. The only sense in which they might see that as the answer is that they've hated the bickering and the fighting between the two parties. But whether they would see a third party or somebody, you know, an independent as the solution to that is questionable. I mean, clearly Bloomberg's name has been brought up as a possible third-party candidate.
And he's loved in the city?
He's absolutely loved in the city. He's, you know, he has the most amazing numbers. He is the only person, perhaps since Lindsay, who's as well liked by black voters as by white voters.
I know,
exactly the same
and
numbers.
3/4 of New Yorkers love the job that he's doing, without getting into the substance.
Right.
But does this travel? I mean, he's traveling all over the place.
He's traveling, but I don't think
it.
At the moment, it doesn't. People really don't know him in the rest of the country. To them, Rudy Giuliani is still New York's mayor.
Okay.
I don't think they know him. He has, God knows, the money to spend to get himself known.
He can wait till February 6th.
He can wait a very long time. I really don't think that he will enter it unless he sincerely believes that he can win, unless he believes that the parties seem to be going with very extreme and divisive candidates.
But that's not very likely.
And, you know, and therefore there's a reason for him to come in as a more moderate voice. But if they're not going with extreme or divisive candidates, if it doesn't appear that way, then I don't see him entering.
I mean, and how do you win 270 electoral votes as a third party candidate?
But he doesn't want to be this year's Ross Perot. He really doesn't.
Well, I mean, clearly he's saner and richer, so he wouldn't be Ross Perot. And then if he wants to win, Perot's 20% ain't enough.
That's right. And he doesn't want to spend his energy and not that he cares about the $100 million so much, or the $500 million or whatever, but you know, right. It's not that he'd feel that. But I think if you look at the history of this man and how successful he has been in his life, in his business as a mayor, he only sets out to win.
To win.
He sets out to win. If he thinks he could win, he'll do it. If he doesn't think it's winnable, he's not going
I agree, and I don't think it's winnable, and I don't think he does it. But we'll see. I mean, as we've said, it's early. Okay. let's go to what I would call the Sims approach to survey. You know, what are good polls? What are bad polls? What are the do's? What are the don'ts? What should we be looking for in a poll, particularly given the tremendous variety of polls?
Well, there's several things to be looking for. You look at who did it. Is it a reputable firm? Who they did it for? Who paid for this? Is this a nonpartisan, independent media poll, or is this
the National Rifle Association?
Is this paid for by some organization that has an agenda, or some?
And who's
some
conducting
reason,
it? Are they a reputable?
And who's conducting it? And how are is it a reputable firm? You look at how they did the poll. Was it a telephone poll? Was it a probability sample?
What does probability sample mean?
Was everybody who given a chance of being included? So that when you do a telephone poll and you do and you use what we call random digit dialing, so that the computer can spit out numbers that are listed or unlisted, and from all exchanges and from everywhere, everybody has a chance of being included in that poll. If you look at polls where they're doing it off of listed numbers, where they're doing it on the internet, you're not getting.
It's a biased sample.
There's really no way that you're getting, a
straw polls,
right? Or anything where people are self-selecting because they're opting into a poll instead
so it's got to be somehow a random poll.
Right.
Now, we're not going to get into today the discussion of cell phones and online and telephone usage, but go ahead. What else do you look for?
Then you do look at the well, to some extent, the size of the sample. I mean, how it was chosen is honestly more important. People tend to think that somehow, how can you predict what, or say what, a million people think by only looking at 600 or 800 or something. That'll, as long as it's of a reasonable size, it's not 20. It's,
right.
It's 500 or 600 or 800. That's fine. Much more important how it was selected.
Right.
And you can look, in terms of the size, it affects the sampling error, what people hear about as margin of error. And so it's plus or minus 4 points. People often don't understand what that means, and they think that means that if you're not within 4 points, that if you're at more than 4 points ahead, then you're, you're outside the margin of error. You're not. It's that each person's numbers could be 4 points higher or 4 points lower. So the spread is much,
range of 8 and a range of 8.
Right. The range is much broader. On the other hand, when people are within a margin of error and they're, let's say, 6 points ahead and there was a 4 point margin of error, to call that a tie or a statistical dead heat isn't really true either. There is, what you can say is that somebody is slightly ahead, is leading somewhat, but what you just know is that you're not quite as certain of the lead as you would be if they were outside the margin of error.
But is that the only problem, margins of error?
No, margin of error is certainly not the only problem. But there are problems with question order. What do you ask first? If you ask about all sorts of issues before you ask about about candidates, you've got people thinking about those issues, and it's going to affect which candidate they're for.
Or you're cueing them in a sense.
Right, or how much they approve of someone. If you were asking all kinds of questions about the war in Iraq, and then you ask about George Bush, you're going to get a different answer.
Or asking Monica Lewinsky questions and asking your approval of Bill Clinton.
Exactly. But it even matters sometimes whether you ask about the primaries before you ask about the general election, so that you're getting people to be thinking about those candidates versus each other rather than the general election. Or if you ask about the general election first, that, for instance, might help a Rudy Giuliani because you're thinking about he would do better in a general election. Now when they ask me which Republican I'm for, I might be more likely to say Rudy Giuliani. So those things affected the question wording. There was just a flap about an NBC poll versus a CBS poll with an immigration question that was very or seemed to be very similar, but got completely different results. And really, there's some very subtle differences in the questions, but they were enough to affect people because in the NBC poll, it talked about immigration and people getting an automatic visa, an automatic work visa, and that brought about people thinking, well, nobody should get that automatically, and so people were opposed. And on the CBS one didn't use that term and talked about some of the things that the immigrants would have to do in order to qualify, and so they got people who said they were for it.
So both are very legitimate questions thought up by experienced survey researchers with no intent to deceive.
Right.
And you've got two
dramatically different results.
And you don't know what the opinion is.
Right. So sometimes one of the things you do also have to look at, especially if you see a result that seems a little surprising, is to look to see if other people are asking questions about this topic and are they getting the same thing, because this kind of thing can happen and it really doesn't mean that they were trying to do it. And the same thing even with the margin of error. The Gallup poll about 2 weeks ago had Obama ahead of Hillary Clinton by a point. I mean, had them essentially tied. And a week later it had Hillary Clinton up by 12 over Obama.
And what happened in between, we don't know.
Possibly nothing, very likely just margin of error, kind of.
What do we look for? We're sitting here, we're looking out from June ahead. What do we look for?
Well, obviously we're looking for movement. We're looking for who's getting better, who's solidifying. And you're looking, and they are looking at some sort of subtle things. So, for instance, with a Hillary Clinton, she's doing very, very well among women. Can she win? Can you win with women alone? Not alone, but
what's the threshold?
You know, how she has to start making some more inroads into the independent voters who still have rather negative feeling about her. You have to see that something's going to change.
So the bottom line is it's too early and you have to come back.
Yes, that's the bottom line.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.